So we are going to talk about color this week. Okay, so let's go. I'd like you to go into Files and make sure you have the folder that's called Proj 1 Pattern Color, because this is the week that we look at coloring. You should already have the folder called Project 1, but there's another folder called Proj 1 Pattern Color. You can just go over to the column on the far right, hover over it, click the little dot and click download, and it'll download everything you need. And also if you click on the is it downloading? It's preparing to download. There it is. So then it went to my downloads. Also, if you go to the assignment section and you click on the Project 1 assignment, you'll see all kinds of resources. So the handouts that we started talking about last week are here at the top. The instructions, which I'll still be looking at, and the design composition and color we started looking at. We're going to get into color on that one. And you have some additional handouts under the color section now to look at. And there's the spoonflower.com website if you wanted to actually have your pattern printed or browse other patterns that are out there to get inspired. You could visit that. I'll be kind of jumping onto some of these videos here that will give you a tour of the printing press, a virtual tour of the printing press, to get an overview of the of what the printing industry is all about, and the web industry, creating work for print versus creating work for the screen environment, for the web and for mobile devices, and all those color fundamentals as they relate to color theory when it comes to digital art issues and topics. So that's all here. Lots of videos that you can watch. I'll probably just give you brief snippets of these videos during class, and you're welcome and encouraged to watch the rest of the videos as you'd like on your own time. So I'm going to jump back to get my download that I just downloaded from Canvas and put it on my, I'm going to go to downloads, and this is the folder I just downloaded, I believe. So I'm going to just double click on it to extract. It's a folder called Proj 1 Pattern Color, and it has the same handouts that are available to click on within your assignment are all here, just so you have the package. I like to just download the folder from Files. And then I just like to put everything together in my folder for the class. So that's what I recommend for you guys, if you have the space on your hard drive to be building the course materials there in a folder for this class on the hard drive. Because you never know when the internet's going to go down or slow down, and then at least you have your materials offline. So I'm going to put this in my folder for this class, the Proj 1 Pattern Color. I'm going to move that there. And I started the black and white version of the pattern, so I'm going to be opening that up to show you how to make a color version from your black and white version. And I'm going to open up from the new folder that I just got. I'll start with, actually I'm going to look at the same handout as last time that I started with, and start with color. So design, composition, and color, going into that one. Just going to skip over this that we talked about last time and jump right into color. So, color. How many of you have created a color wheel before? Let's see if I can see you guys, my participants. Where's my view? Gotta get the view of you all. Okay, so how many? Let's get a show of hands. You can raise your hand in the participants or like this for real. How many of you have created a color wheel yourselves using paint? Mixing paint in an art class? A few here and there. So it's a great exercise to just familiarize yourselves with the way color works physically in the physical world, and then how it's organized, how it gets organized around the color wheel, and how that determines kind of the laws of physics relating to color, and then how color schemes are devised from the color wheel setup. Oh, the traditional color schemes. You can, color is a very intuitive phenomenon. So it's really based on, what color scheme you come up with can really be based on your intuition, your feeling, and you can create amazing color schemes just like that, just by your own choices. But there are color schemes that have stood the test of time, that are tried and true, that it's worth learning about, because sometimes you want to go with one of those. Like in this case for our assignment, we're going to go with a complementary color scheme. That's the goal. That'll get you points for knowing what a complementary color scheme is and how to apply it in Illustrator. So we're going to learn about that today. And I'm going to start with showing you kind of how to make a color wheel just within Illustrator. It's like the no mess version of creating a color wheel without, normally you use paint and you mix paint. But let's start one, and I provide you with a color wheel as one of your handouts, the class color wheel. But I like to kind of do it with you in class. And if you want to, if you're on full screen right now on Zoom, if you want to exit full screen so you can work along with me, it's kind of a fun process of creating a color wheel. It's not part of the assignment. You don't have to turn it in. You're not turning it in as part of the assignment. The only documents that you're turning in for next week, when the pattern is due, is the black and white version of your pattern as an Illustrator file and a color version of your pattern as an Illustrator file. But just so that we get an understanding of color, I'm going to make a new document, and you could do this too if you'd like. It's optional, not to be turned in. And I'm just going to call this color wheel and put it on a letter size document. I'm using print settings right now. And we're going to talk about print settings versus web settings, or versus so normally I ask you to use print settings, and that's to set up your document so that it's the colors that come up in swatches, and the color choices that you make are ideal for print, and you're in a color mode that's ideal for print, which is the CMYK color mode. Any other, all the other presets, like if you're doing presets for the web, notice the color mode is RGB color, because RGB color is the color mode that is ideal for the screen. So the swatches that you choose are gonna be colors that are gonna look look accurate on other monitors, most likely. So the same thing with with choosing for film and video, choosing a preset for film and video, or choosing a preset for mobile devices. You're designing purely for the screen, so the color mode is gonna be set up for to be ideal for designs on screen. Right, just when you're working, all the imagery that you see, all the colors that are displayed to you are through the screen. So everything is RGB, which stands for red, green, and blue. And we'll talk about that later. And that's those are the primary colors when it comes to color as light, because everything that we see on our screen is made up of nothing but lights. But when you go from a digital design on screen, and you want to print it, then those lights, that color as light in the form of red, green, and blue, which red, green, and blue are combining in different ways to create all the millions of colors that you see on your screen. That color displayed to us as light needs to then be translated to color on paper as ink. And so the laws of physics change, and a lot can be lost in translation very easily, and the accuracy of color is very tricky to maintain, going from looking at artwork on screen to getting it to print, whether you're printing on your desktop printer or you're taking your work to be printed at a professional printing press. So if you're planning to print your work at all, it's always good to start with the print document, and you still could take something you created in print and then optimize it for the web or for screen viewing as well. So I'm going to start with the print document that's going to be using the CMYK color mode, and leave all the default settings and click create. And I want to make a color wheel. So I just mentioned that RGB, red, green, which stands for red, green, and blue, are primary colors when it comes to color as light. But when we're thinking about color as ink or color as paint, there's a whole different set of laws of physics, and we have different primaries, different three starting colors that are different primary colors, and primary colors are the colors that you cannot mix to get these colors. These colors are the original three colors, and you mix these colors to get all the rest of the colors that you might paint with when we're talking about paint or ink. So what are they? Can you guys think back to your art class days, or I remember in the second grade doing a lesson on primary colors. Think back to your early days. What are the primary colors?
Blue, yellow, red.
That's right. Blue, yellow, and red. So when you start a color wheel, you start with those primaries, and then you mix to get all the rest of the colors around the color wheel, which you're just in mixing those colors, you're just creating a spectrum of color of the colors that you would see on the rainbow. And those are the colors that we talk about when we talk about different hues for devising color schemes. So I'm going to just use the ellipse tool, hold down shift and draw out a little circle and make my life easy, and use the swatches that come with a print document. So whenever because I set this up for print as a CMYK document, I get a set of swatches that are ideal for printing. And when I hover over each of the swatches, it'll tell me what it is and tell me what the color is by name. And if it says, like in this case, CMYK red, there's no question that this swatch is going to print red. It's not going to end up orange. If I go over here to the color picker and I double click and I choose my own red by using this slider here, this is the hue slider, and then I go and I choose a red that I like, and I say, oh, I like that red. there's a chance that the red that I've selected could end up more like a violet. I could get results that are unexpected when I choose my own color. But I'm not gonna, I wouldn't limit myself and say, oh, I shouldn't choose my own colors. No, you can always choose your own colors. Just be aware that when you choose your own colors, nothing is guaranteed. And we'll talk about strategies to help achieve more color accuracy so that you in the future won't have those unexpected surprises that are not so nice to have in certain cases. So like this blue might not be a real blue. It might end up being more like an aqua or something else, like a blue green. So so just be aware. Although if I'm away from the green, I'm away from the violet, I'm pretty sure all of this is blue when I'm along the hue slider. So it helps to choose color along the hue slider so you're safe. Like that. So now I know as long as I'm up here, I'm in the red zone. Red zone in a good way, because I want to choose red. Or down here, we get into the violet. But I don't want to choose violet right now. I want to just go, I'm going to cancel and just go with this red. It's a tried and true red. We know it's red because it's a swatch that's called CMYK red. It's a standard red. I'm going to duplicate this circle out and find another primary. There's a CMYK yellow. That makes life easy. And then I'm going to duplicate this out and find a blue CMYK blue. So those are standard swatch colors. You know they're going to print what their names are. Red, blue, and yellow. Okay. So then we mix the colors, the primary colors, to give rise to what kind of colors come next. Just checking if you're awake. It's pretty straightforward if you know.
Secondary.
Secondary, right. Primary, then secondary. So when we mix, let's pretend we're mixing paint. When we mix red with blue, what do we get?
Purple.
Right. So let me duplicate out the red, and I could find a purple in swatches I like. And notice some of these colors are not labeled by name, like these top ones are. Some of them are labeled by amount of each of the, what we call the 4 process colors, which I'm going to talk more about. Do you guys know what these colors stand for, the process colors? There's C, there's an amount of C, an amount of M, amount of Y, an amount of yellow here. I mean, so I just gave it away. What is, do you guys, anyone know what CMYK stands for? I'm going to double click on this color so you can see.
Cyan, magenta.
Yes, so that's our color mode, CMYK, and it's also refers to cyan, magenta, yellow, and we call the K key, which actually refers to black. And each color, when you're using the color type that we call process color, which is the standard color type when you're in a CMYK document, you're using process colors. When you choose a process color, what that means is that you're using transparent inks, a combination of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black that will combine on the printing press to create whatever color you choose. So in this case, this combination of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, which there's no yellow and black in this, it's just 75% cyan with 100% magenta that makes up this purple color or violet color. So that's a standard purple. I could also double click on my color picker and choose my own purple. So right now we have the H is selected. H stands for, anyone know what H stands for? Hue. That's right. These top 3 buttons here, these radio buttons, H, S, and B, they determine what this slider is. So normally, by default, we have this slider as the hue slider. So hues are colors along a spectrum or colors on the rainbow. And hues are differentiated by name, like red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple or violet, and then we go back to red again, and it's like goes on and on and on. Think of this as making a loop going around. But there's S. Anyone know what S stands for?
Saturation.
Saturation, which we're going to talk about in a minute. The level of intensity of color versus bright. Like it's not brightness, not to be confused with brightness, but it's the level of color versus no color. The level in amount of color versus grayscale, going from color at full intensity down to completely the grayscale version of that color. So it's the level of saturation is the amount of pure color versus neutral. And then we have, what does B stand for, do you think, in this case? I just mentioned it. I said not to be confused with saturation. Brightness. So this is the level of kind of light to dark in that color. So you can change what this slider is based on these top 3 buttons. We'll change this slider. But normally we have it on hue, so we can choose a hue. So I can choose purple here, and then I can choose over here when I drag the circle around, it's changing the saturation and brightness together, which changes the value of the color. So I can have like a lighter color tint, or I can darken the color, deepen the color up. I want to avoid exclamation marks, because if I see an exclamation mark appear, what does that mean? You guys remember? I think I mentioned it before. It says out of gamut warning. Anyone know what gamut is?
Didn't you say that like when it prints, it may not look, like it may not register?
Yeah, chances are if it says out, if it has an out of gamut warning, that gamut refers to the device. So it means that the devices aren't going to talk to each other. They don't know that language. The printer doesn't have the capability of printing this color that's selected, that the monitor has the capability of displaying. Because again, color that we see on our monitors is made up of nothing but lights, and printers print ink. So if the printer doesn't have the ink, it's that it can be displayed as in light, then that's when you're going to get a warning that this color, it looks great on the screen, but it's not going to be able to print like this color, very much like this color at all. So it's going to be a different color. So you don't want to get unexpected results. So to maintain a higher level of color accuracy, you want to avoid the exclamation marks as much as possible, so that what you see on your monitor is going to be closer to what you get. Now, nothing is 100% when it comes to looking at color as light. That's going to be translated to color as ink. But you can get closer anyway. So you want to click the exclamation marks or click the swatch below, and then that will allow Illustrator to correct the color to a safer color, or you can simply drag the circle to a different color where the exclamation mark disappears. But you could also have Illustrator just find a color for you, but it may not be the color you want, so you might want to adjust things more manually. So I think I like that one. Oh, that's a little bit more of a blue violet. I think I'm gonna push that a little closer to the red. Lighten it up a little bit maybe. Or maybe go with the one that was there already. I kind of like that one. Alright, so you can choose your own colors that way, or you can find swatches that you like. Okay, now let's imagine we're mixing red and yellow. What do we get? What's the secondary color? what's in between when we mix red with yellow? Can you picture it? Has anyone ever mixed red and yellow?
Orange.
That's right. So I can choose an orange here in swatches. That makes my life easy. Or I can double click on the color picker and find an orange. It looks like it's pointing to red, but this is actually more orange, and red is probably up at the top here more. So that's orange enough for me for now. And then we mix blue and yellow. What do we get?
Green.
Green, that's right. So those are the secondary colors. Green, orange, and violet. Now we mix the colors again, and that finishes the color wheel. So the colors side by side we mix together to get what type of color? Anyone know? It's a fancy word. It starts with a T. The final set of colors that we make to finalize the color wheel are the
Tertiary.
Tertiary, that's right. So we mix red and orange, and we get in between that, what do we get? Red, orange. So I can double click on that and push this color closer to the red. And now I have a color between red and orange. Maybe I want to make this a little more orange, like a little more up here in the orange here. And then I could go with this one a little bit here, there. Okay, so red, they're very subtle differences here. And then we mix the orange with the yellow and we get what? Yellow orange, just what its name sounds like it should be. I'm getting an exclamation mark. I could click to correct that. Then we mix the yellow and the green and we get, what do we get? Yellow green. So I'm going to push the yellow to the green. Click the exclamation mark to correct it. Yellow green. Then we mix the green and the blue and we get, what do we get? Blue green, right? Just what its name sounds like it is. So I'm just dragging the slider to the in-between color. Mixing the blue and the violet, we get blue-violet. So, ooh, this one might have already been, this was the blue, so that was blue. I want to push the blue towards the violet. There we go. And then violet and mixing with the red, we get red, violet. So I'm going to push the red towards the violet. Let me just adjust the color. It looks more like a magenta, but I'll call that red, violet. Okay, so now here's a fun way to equally space objects around a circle. If you look at it's under your line segment tool. If you hold down on the line segment tool in the advanced toolbar and you go all the way down to the bottom of the list, you can find the polar grid tool. And when you draw out a shape with the polar grid tool, it looks like this. You'll have radial dividers that are the kind of dividers that you get when you slice a pizza or a pie, and then concentric dividers that go around. So we can alter what this tool can draw out by double clicking on the tool, and then I don't need any concentric dividers, so I'm going to make those 0, and I need the radial dividers to be 12 because there are 12 colors in a color wheel. I'm going to say okay, and then I'm going to hold shift to draw out a perfect circle, and then I can arrange these colors equally spaced around the color wheel by dragging the circle so that the center of each circle will snap to the intersecting lines on this polar grid that I've just created with the polar grid tool. And that's a nice way to have your objects equally spaced around a circular form. Okay, so let me just send the grid to the back now. Range, send to back. And then you see that the colors that are like each other are all next to each other. They're called analogous colors when they're next to each other. And colors that are most different from each other lie opposite each other on the color wheel. And what do we call those sets of opposites? We call them what? Starts with a C.
Complementary colors.
Complementary colors. They are the colors that are most different from one another, the physical opposites of each other, like red and green and yellow and violet, blue and orange, and then even the tertiaries. Every color has an opposite. So we've got blue green, its opposite is red orange, and yellow orange's opposite is what's the opposite of yellow orange? Blue violet. So the colors end up across from each other on the color wheel, and for your complementary color scheme, you want to think of one color and its opposite, and then make variations of just those two hues for your complementary color scheme. But I like to actually open with this song. So let's wake up here, and I'm going to put on this song I really like the way color theory is explained in a nutshell in this song. So it's going to entice one sense to inform another. So let's take a listen to this verse and think about the lyrics. Wait, can you guys hear the sound, or does it sound strange? Because I think there's a way I can share my screen that's optimized for playing media. Let me see if there was an option for that. Share, tell me if this sounds better. Share sound and optimize for video. And then I need someone to remind me to take it off this setting after I play the video, if you can. Okay, let me know if this is better.
Yeah, it's good.
There's a difference in the sound quality. Does it sound louder, or does it matter?
Sounds good.
Okay, good.
I don't understand about complementary colors and what they say. Side by side they both get right, together they both get gray. But he's been pretty much yellow, and I've been kind of blue. But all I can see is red, 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 red now. What am I gonna do?
Okay, so let's break that down. Can you guys still hear me, or should I take it off? Maybe I should take it off those settings and share my screen again. Do you guys notice the difference between how I sound now and how I sounded before? Or it doesn't matter?
Sounds the same.
Sounds the same. Okay. So let's break that down. So she says, I don't understand about complementary colors and what they say. Well, now we kind of have a little bit more of an understanding about complementary colors. What are they? They are opposite colors to one another. But then, what do they say? So let's think about what she says next. Side by side, they both get bright. That's a true phenomenon of complementary colors when they're at equal value, which we're going to talk about what value is in a moment. They actually brighten each other up. in some cases they vibrate, causing a phenomenon called simultaneous contrast that makes it difficult to focus on one or the other. But in general, they look good paired next to each other. They complement each other. When you mix them, that's what she's referring to here, they neutralize. They turn into shades of gray at equal amounts when you combine complementary colors. Then she says, starts out talking about complementary colors, but then she's not talking about complementary colors anymore, right? She's talking about color as in a different way, colors that are not complementary. So she says, he's been pretty much yellow, and I've been kind of blue. Now before she was talking about kind of the physicality of color and how it works visually, and then when talking about complementary colors, and then she switches and starts talking about color as it can be used in to create meaning and to evoke feeling, and color in a way that represents certain meaning and certain feelings. So in this case, she's using color sort of for its cultural context or cultural meaning to express something in her art about the story that she's putting together here or expressing here. So she says he's been pretty much yellow. Does anyone know what that could mean in that context?
Yellow means scared.
Scared, yeah, that was a record time that someone got that, because normally it takes a while for people to catch on to that context and that meaning of the word, the color yellow, because it's very specific. It kind of has a cultural context to it. I guess it's like some parts of the South in the United States, they use the term yellow to refer to scared, like that yellow belly. They just I'm not sure exactly how that came about, that the word yellow can mean scared, but that's the cultural meaning that's attached to that color. And in this context, I would agree that that's what she's talking about, that whoever he is, he's been scared. And then she says, and I've been kind of blue. So usually blue is more straightforward. More people have heard of the context, the meaning of blue in this context. So what do you think she's saying about herself when she says she's been blue? Sad, exactly. So he's been yellow, she's been blue. He's been scared, she's been sad. What do you guys think that she is talking about here? What do you think that he is scared of and she is sad about? Anyone care to venture out and take a leap, imagine what the song could be about?
Commitment.
Commitment, right on. Have you heard the rest of this song? The next verse, she starts singing about diamonds and she doesn't know why men buy them. So
I've never heard this song before.
wow, you're right on. Usually I have to play the next verse too before people catch on to all of that, but it's very good. So the way I like to interpret this song is I envision that she's trying to put the two together. But right now he's yellow, she's blue. When you combine yellow and blue, we just mentioned it. What do you get?
Green.
Green. And green symbolizes, what does green symbolize? What about on the road? What does green symbolize? Go. So she's trying to put them together and go forward with this relationship between the two of them. He's scared of commitment. She's sad because he's not ready to commit. And all she sees is red, 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 red. That's a lot of reds. And there's a lot of meaning in red. So what can we say about red? What kind of, what do you think red symbolizes here? Or evokes?
Anger.
Anger could definitely be one that she's feeling. What else? What about on the road?
Stop.
Stop, like it's the opposite of green. Literally, it is the complement of green, right? So she's trying to put them together. She's focusing on going forwards. She's maybe seeing that green, but then she sees the opposite, which is red. What else can we say about red? Besides anger,
Warning.
stop, warning, right? Danger. What else about red? We just had a holiday where there's a lot of red. What does that symbolize in that holiday we just had?
Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day. What does red symbolize in Valentine's Day?
Love.
Love. What else? Passion. Yes, definitely. So all of that is coming into play here. I think red symbolizes all of that here in this song. And one interesting phenomenon about complementary colors is that when you actually look at a color long enough, like I'm just picturing that she's trying to put the two of them together and she's seeing green and it's just focusing on green and going forward. When you stare at, let's say if you stared at green, a green swatch of color long enough, and then you look away to a empty space like on a wall, on a white wall, you actually see the same shape that you were staring at, but you see the opposite color. You would see a shape that's red. So that's exactly what she ends up seeing is the opposite, which is a real phenomenon with complementary colors. You should try it if you've never done it. It's pretty cool.
And it worked.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's a pretty cool phenomenon that works with the way, the way our eyes function and with light. So it's very interesting to try that out. So this is Color Theory in a Nutshell by Fiona Apple. But let's dive into it a little more, talking about our handout on color here. And there are 4 attributes of color that I'd like us to know about. And we talked about one already. It starts with an H, hue. So I mentioned hue is the reference to a particular color that distinguishes it by name from another, such as red, orange, yellow, blue. So when we talk about different hues that are distinguished by name, we're talking about like the hue slider here, the different colors along the spectrum, or the different colors along the rainbow, just rainbow colors. Can you guys think of any other attributes of color, how colors are categorized or altered in different ways, different characteristics of color? There are 4 attributes. Can anyone think of any other names besides hue? One starts with a V. Value. So value is another one that we talk about in terms of attributes of color. Value is like brightness, I would say. The term that we use in Illustrator that references value would be brightness. So the measure of lightness or darkness of a color. And value is broken down into tints, tones, and shades. When you're using paint, you create tints by mixing the pure color with white, and tones by mixing the color with gray, and shades by mixing the color with black. Here in Illustrator, you choose your hue, and then you can change the value by dragging the circle around in this field here. So right now I'm on the red hue and I'm dragging the circle up into the white area So it's like I'm adding white to the red. And what color am I creating here? You know this one by name.
Pink.
Pink, which is actually just a tint of red. So if you chose to do a complementary color scheme with red and green as your opposite colors, as your complements, you wouldn't have to make your complementary color scheme look like a Christmas card. It could be using pinks and pale greens you can use any value in a color scheme. You choose your hues for your color scheme, and then you can alter the colors in value and intensity, which we're going to talk about, which is also known as saturation. You can alter saturation and brightness any way you'd like. So here I'm making all different tints of the red, which are pinks. And if I go down here, I'm making tones of the red, which is more like maybe mauve would be. We still give names to these colors, even though it's all within the same hue of red. And then if I drag this little circle down lower, I'm adding black. So I'm making shades of red, which might be called maroon or brown. You can get browns down here. Or like if I were choosing orange again is, you can get browns by changing the value of orange. So using a complementary color scheme doesn't limit you from being able to choose browns. You don't have to just use the pure, like orange. What's the opposite of orange? You guys remember? It's good to memorize these basic complements. Like orange and what's the opposite of orange? You can look at the color wheel. Orange and blue, right? So if you choose orange, you need to do nothing but oranges and blues. Different oranges, they can be pale oranges, tints of orange, tones, shades, and the same thing with blues. You can use all different kinds of blues, tints, tones, shades, or pure blue colors. So value, hue and value, two attributes of color. Then the next one is intensity, which I've mentioned is also known as saturation. When we're working in digital art, we refer to intensity of color as saturation, which is the level of pure color versus neutral, versus like dullness of a color. So when you desaturate a photograph, you're cranking the color down to black and white. Saturation, when you're working in video, we refer to the saturation or the intensity of color as chroma, the level of color versus no color, versus black and white, versus then that's a level of saturation. So notice when I'm on the color picker and I'm moving my circle in a straight line back and forth on a horizontal, just going back and forth. Here, let me zoom in here so you can see. So when I'm just moving side to side along a horizontal, of these three attributes here, hue, saturation, and brightness, which number is changing as I'm moving side to side? Can you see?
Saturation.
Saturation, that's exactly right. Because notice in the color field here, the color on the far right edge, everything is pure color, the most intense color. And then as we move along the horizontal in a straight line, the edge over here on the far left, everything is grayscale. So we're desaturating the color by moving across in a horizontal, taking the color down. When you choose a color and then you choose the saturation slider, as if you convert this slider into the saturation slider, notice as I move the slider up, I'm intensifying the color. As I move the slider down, I'm going to a grayscale version of that color. So it's taking the pure color out. So just keep in mind, desaturate means going black and white. Like if you desaturate a photograph, you're taking color out, making it black and white. I'm going to go back to the hue slider. Then if I am moving the circle straight up and down on the vertical of these three attributes, hue, saturation, or brightness, which number is actually changing when I'm moving straight up and down on the vertical?
Brightness.
Brightness. That's exactly right. Because moving up and down, notice everything along the top is the lightest colors and everything along the bottom is pure dark black. So that's moving up and down on the vertical changes the level of brightness of a color. And when I choose a color and switch to the brightness slider, you can see that here too. As I drag the slider up, the color's getting lighter and lighter and bright. As I drag the slider down, I'm darkening the color down to black. So it's another way to alter color. You can switch the slider here, but I like to usually be on hue for this slider and then alter saturation and brightness together by dragging the circle around. I wonder... It'd be cool if you could just hold shift and drag in a straight line, but it doesn't seem to be working that way. Maybe the next Adobe update. Okay, so hue, value, intensity, those are three attributes of color. Anyone know what the fourth attribute of color is? Another quality of color that we use to categorize color? Starts with a T. It's... Did I hear it? Did someone say it?
For sure.
Did you guys say temperature?
Yeah.
Very cool. Yes, that is correct. Temperature. So temperature is defined as the warmth or coolness of a color. And colors that are warmer pop forward, colors that are cool pull backward. So you can use that to your advantage as a designer to create depth in your work, where elements pop to the front more, and then to create more depth, have the background elements cooler. They'll pull backwards more. Color that is defined as warmer has more amounts of red and yellow, and color that is cooler actually have more amounts of blue. Within similar hues, you can see a subtle temperature difference. Like in this example, this is a violet hue. We've got a red violet popping forward with a blue violet pulling backward. Even the subtle difference, you can see that that relationship between the colors. Then moving on to color schemes. So once we have our color wheel set up, you can devise various color schemes that are tried and true from the color wheels. So there are three here that have descriptions: complementary colors, monochromatic, and analogous. I also have, among your handouts, I have a color schemes handout that I'm going to open up. That's cool to look at and read about the different traditional color schemes that are tried and true. So there's a description about the color scheme here that's showing an example of what color was selected on the color wheel for that color scheme, and then an example of the color swatches that were used, and if there were variations of the colors that were selected along the color wheel. how they were varied, and then what the design looked like. So, like I said, for any color scheme that you choose, you can vary the pure colors that you select along the color wheel in value and intensity. In other words, you can vary those colors in brightness and saturation. So any color, so you choose a hue. You choose a hue to work with, like let's say I want green. And then you can vary that green. You can choose all different kinds of pale greens or tones of the green or shades of the green. That looks like a deep forest green versus like a lime green. You can go with, you can choose all different greens. And then for a complementary color scheme, you can choose all different, the opposite of green we know is red, so all different reds, including pinks, including maroons, including mauves. All of that counts as various types of red. So all different types of red and all different types of green, that would be a true complementary color scheme. You wouldn't be breaking any rules there. With a monochromatic color scheme, you can only choose one color, and then you can, to create the different contrast in the design, then you need to vary that one color in all different ways, in brightness and saturation, or otherwise known as value and intensity. So in this case, what did they do to vary the blue? They chose the pure blue color, and then they created what? What did they change? Are these tints, tones, or shades? Look, these are actually, they look like tints to me, at least from where I'm seeing through my monitor. It looks like just the lighter, like as if they mixed white with the blue. It looks like two different tints to me. But they could have used shades, they could have used tones. And in any color scheme, you can always use neutral colors as well. You can always use black, any shade of gray, and white. And it doesn't break the rules of the color scheme. So, but this is just an example. So in this example, they used the pure color blue, and they used different tints of the blue to create the lighter forms. This is a triad where you choose colors that are equally spaced around the color wheel. In this example, they decided not to vary the colors in any way, not in value or intensity. They just used the pure colors right off the color wheel because the colors had a nice enough contrast, a nice enough balance as is. So they created this example in the design. This one is an example of analogous colors, where you choose colors that are side by side along the color wheel, and a good harmonious analogous color scheme will have a common primary color. Which is the common primary color in all of these colors? We've got green, we've got yellow green, and we've got yellow. Which one, what would you say is the common primary in all of those colors? We're talking about color as the primary when we're talking about color as paint or ink. It would be yellow. And remember, it is past the time that the class is scheduled, but I am going to be just going to the end of this, the length I normally teach this class, and anyone who needs to leave is welcome to leave, and you can watch the rest of the lesson later on your own time if you'd like. But I'm going to keep going. We'll take at 7:45, we'll take a 10-minute break, and then come back, and I'll show you how to do your color version of your pattern. But you can look at these descriptions to know more about color schemes. 3, 4, or 5 adjacent hues on the color wheel. That would be an analogous color scheme using 3, 4, or 5 adjacent colors on the color wheel. So these are there for you just to get a sense of examples of different color schemes that are tried and true. The next one is what our goal is for the assignment, an example of a complementary color scheme where you choose one color on the color wheel and its opposite. So in this case, what did they choose? Blue and orange. So they used the pure colors, blue and orange, right off the color wheel. Using the pure colors means that the colors are equal in value. So pairing them side by side, you would have a situation that we call the phenomenon of simultaneous contrast, where the colors would vibrate. But there's a way to offset that vibration from happening if you want your viewer to have a more calm experience with the design. You can offset that by either changing the value of the colors or adding a neutral color like black or white or gray, which is what they did. They added the black in there to offset that vibration from happening, and that's why this design has just a calming look to it. You don't have that vibrating going on, which you may want if you're trying to create a real wild experience for your viewer. You want them to get a little dizzy or hopefully not have a seizure or anything, but that could happen to your viewer with pairing two complements at equal value side by side without the offsetting, using a neutral color or changing the value of the color. In this case, this last one is an example of a split complement, where you choose one color on the color wheel, and instead of choosing the exact opposite, you choose the colors on either side of the opposite color. So the colors on either side of the complement. So here we have a blue-green, and instead of using the opposite of blue-green, which would have been red-orange, they are using red and orange. And this would also create the phenomenon of simultaneous contrast if the colors were all at equal value. But what did they do to avoid that vibrating from happening in this design? They changed one of the colors. Which color did they change, and how did they change it? Can you see?
Tint of orange.
Very good. They made a tint of orange. So they changed the value of orange to a tint. Very good. So let's talk about I'm going to go into the pattern and talk about the steps to making your color version. Oh, actually, I'll do that when we come back from break. So it's 7:45. Let's come back at 7:55, and then what you guys have been waiting for we'll get into, which is making the color version of your pattern.